for the only kind of ramp you could build which would be sufficiently stable to haul very heavy blocks, and I stress the minimum weight is 2.5 tons. There are blocks of 70 tons in the Great Pyramid. The ramp itself would have to be made of material as stable as the pyramids themselves. In other words, the ramps would have to be made of 2.5-ton blocks of stone as well. And a 1-mile-long ramp reaching a height of 450 feet would occupy many, many times more area, of course, and more weight, and millions of times more material than the Great Pyramid itself. That material is nowhere to be seen around the Giza necropolis. That material that would have had to have been used to make those ramps has never been found.
Then, Graham, can you conceive of how it was done? Or is the answer that is part of the mystery?
For me, that is part of the mystery, but I think it's clear that we are looking at a lost technology or a lost form of human knowledge. I pay attention to the many ancient Egyptian traditions that speak of priests using a kind of focused energy of the mind that they called hekau, which we primitively translate as magic, using focused energy of the mind to lift blocks of stone off the ground without effort, literally a levitation of the blocks of stone. I don't want to sound like some crazy, but we are so rooted and grounded in our materialistic conception of how things can be done. Our society has conditioned us like slaves ourselves to think that difficult tasks can only be accomplished by technology, and we fail to realize that we may not be using untapped capacities of the human mind. We may have the capacity as a species to do the most wonderful and extraordinary things, to achieve almost anything we can imagine, but we've got so fixed and locked into the technological way of thinking that we always look for a technological explanation. And that's why, since we know that there is no evidence, there's no surviving evidence of a high technology from the period of 2500 BC, we therefore go along with the Egyptologists when they come up with these ludicrous theories about slaves and ramps.
Then, Graham, isn't it possible that once this is opened and it is realized that mankind has been, in effect, going entirely in the wrong direction, in the technological direction, when there was all the while another direction we should have or could have been going in, it will explode everything?
Yes, that's why this material is in fact so subversive, and why there is such hostility and opposition to it by established authorities. Because this material questions the entire foundations of modern society, and it questions the entire ethic and philosophy of modern society, which has sought that the whole ethic of our society seeks to persuade us that we are nothing more than material beings, and that we must define ourselves entirely in material terms and in technological terms, and in terms of the objects that we possess. And so insidious and dark and ugly is this philosophy of modern society that we even come to regard other human beings as objects, and we're prepared to visit mass destruction on them without the blink of an eye. People use the bodies of other human beings as though they are objects to be traded. There was a case in England recently of 2 men who murdered a small child. They used his body and then murdered him and disposed of the body without a second thought, without a qualm, without a conscience. Monsters like that are the creation of our society.
It's happening all over the world, Graham.
Yes, it's happening all over the world, and thank God something else is happening all over the world as well, which is that people are waking up to the other side of our character, to the possibility that we are capable of transcending ourselves, that we have something wonderful within us, something divine as well as something dark, and that we can reach that. But if we stay locked in the mindset of the late 20th century, locked in the mindset of technology and objects, and fail to realize our spiritual potential, then it's going to be a terrible loss. So I think we're at a crucial, critical turning point in the life of mankind.
Is it possible, Graham, very quickly, because we're coming to the top of the hour, we never did get calls, is it possible that we will miss it, that Orion will come and go, and mankind will not get to this information, and or worse yet, lose it?
Yes, I think it's entirely possible that we will miss it. I think it's entirely possible that we will miss this window of opportunity that exists at the moment.
All right, I
think
promise.
it's very possible, but I also think it's possible that we can seize the opportunity.
All right, I promise we go to the phones. Relax, Graham. We'll be back to you. That hour just went. Graham Hancock is my guest. You're listening to CBC.
Where Southern California comes to talk. Talk radio.
D.C. once again, Graham Hancock. Graham, if you could answer one quick question, then to the calls. It's a fax from Torrance, California. Would you please ask Graham about a tool that Moses used to write the Ten Commandments? In his book, The Sign and Seal, he says that Moses went into the clouds on Mount Ararat. When he returned after using this tool, he had to cover his face. Was this some sort of powered tool? How was it powered? Was it a laser? What could it have been?
Yes, thank you for that for that question. It was while I was writing The Sign and the Seal, which is my quest for the Lost Ark of the Covenant, that I first started to bump into these strange echoes of a kind of lost system of knowledge from long, long ago. Strange descriptions of objects and artifacts that seemed out of place in time and didn't fit with the orthodox view of history at that time. And actually, I think that the person who sent the fax is getting a couple of points that I made in The Sign and the Seal mixed up. There is a strange tool, I guess would be the word for it, that I refer to in The Sign and the Seal, which was known as the shamir, the stone that cuts rocks, or in some translations, the worm that cuts rocks. And this strange device was said to have cut through the hardest of rock without creating any friction or heat, that it was to have been soundless in operation, and to have had such a nature that it had to be kept in a lead container. That any other form of container would become dangerous because of it. And this strange object is said in ancient Judaic traditions to have been used in the construction of the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, because there was a prescription against using iron tools in the cutting of the ashlar blocks of the Temple of Solomon. And therefore it is said in many ancient Judaic traditions that the shamir was used instead, some kind of device that we don't understand, which was capable of cutting the hardest rocks. They said that it could engrave tiny letters onto jewels. Yes, it does sound like I mean, if we look at it in terms of modern stuff, it sounds like some kind of laser.
Like some kind of laser,
or with an energy source. Now, the other point that the person who sent the fax makes is right. The Bible tells us that Moses, in fact, went up Mount Sinai twice, 2 periods of 40 days. At the end of the first 40-day period, he came down supposedly with the 10 Commandments written on 2 tablets of stone by the finger of God, and he found the Israelites worshipping the golden calf, and the Bible says that he destroyed the 2 tablets of stone at that time. He then returned back up Mount Sinai, spent another 40-day period there, and came down with 2 more tablets of stone. And this time, when he came down, his face is reported to have glowed so horribly that all his followers were terrified, and that ever afterwards, until the end of his days, he had to wear a veil over his face. It sounds like he was bent. And when you listen to the descriptions of what went on at the top of Mount Sinai in the Bible and in extra biblical sources, it does sound very, very odd. And for me, the answer to this, and it was really the research I was doing on that led me to the research of Fingerprints of the Gods, and from there to the message of the Sphinx, because the background of Moses is the crucial issue. Moses grew up in the household of a pharaoh of Egypt. In fact, he was groomed as a potential pharaoh, and this means that he would have been initiated into all the high wisdom and knowledge of ancient Egypt. And I think that much of the magic and miracles associated with Moses needs to be understood in context of his Egyptian background as a high initiate, as a high priest, in fact, fact, in the Egyptian tradition, and even the Ark of the Covenant itself, I found, has precedence in Egyptian traditions. Golden boxes are described, which, when opened, produce a jet of flame that comes out and burns, consumes anybody standing around them. That's exactly what the Ark of the Covenant did.
And we are not to open that, are we?
I would say not, no.
All right, let's go to the phones. We promised we've got to do it. First time caller line, you're on the air with Graham Hancock. Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Where are you, sir?
Speak to both of you, Mr. Bell and Mr. Hancock.
Yes, sir. Where are you?
I'm in the San Joaquin Valley of